Okay, I believe we're now live. Fantastic. So delighted to be here. This is the second installment for me, HiBob and Strive, and working in partnership to bring us the goods in terms of looking to the future, business resilience forward into the 2024 priorities. I can't wait to hear from the expert panel that we have today, hosted by the wonderful Damien Andreasen from HiBob, APJ. So Asia Pacific and Japan is what you cover. That's a huge remit. We've got Rimonda from Indebted, who heads up the PNC function. And we have Jamie, People and Talent in Constantinople. And we've got lovely Nicole Karagiannis, the Chief People Officer at Harrison AI. I'm now going to pass it over to Damien. Before I do so, please, as we're going along in the session, I will be behind the scenes taking your questions. I'll be commenting in the chat. So I'd love for whoever is joining us today to be able to be interacting in that sense. If you've got a question you want to ask, I could even bring it up to the panel to see it themselves. It'll be wonderful to have that interaction. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Damien.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joe, and welcome Rimonda, Nicole, and Jamie to the second webinar in our latest series with Striving. It's great to have you all here. Really looking forward to getting some insights as we look into our crystal balls, think a little bit about what's coming in 2024. And today we're going to be talking about not just looking into the future, but also the role that resilience plays in thinking about how we're moving into the new year and some of the planning. As we all know, it's been an interesting couple of years. The HR remit continues to broaden. It's highly adaptable. It faces new challenges all the time. So that idea of resilience, I think, is a really nice parallel in terms of how are we making sure that we're on top of the challenges that you face in your day-to-days and making sure that you're striking that balancing act between the employees and the employers to make everybody as happy as possible and I guess productive as well. So looking forward to jumping in today. Just before we jump into the questions, I might just get each of you to do a quick intro, background and where you're working so everyone gets a little bit of a sense of the context. And Jamie, I'll kick over to you first. Have we got you, Jamie? Or are you? No, you're on mute there. I might swap over to Rimonda first. I'll kick to you and then we'll come back to Jamie.
No problem. Thanks, Damien. Nice to welcome everyone. I'm Rimonda. I head up the People and Culture team at Indebted. It's a debt collection company, really changing the world of consumer debt recovery for good. We've got around 200 or so people across the globe, some big clients like Afterpay, Zip, Klarna. I'm here today to share with you some stories and also where we're going around the people and culture space.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rimonda. Nicole, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of background.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Nicole Karagiannis. I'm the Chief People and Culture Officer for Harrison AI. You may also be familiar with our two joint ventures, Annalise AI and Franklin AI. We collectively work to change the lives of 1 million patients a day. That's our North Star, and do so through AI as a medical device. So we have some diagnostics and some AI products that can read your chest X-ray or your CT scan for your brain, and working on a few more products. So with the hype of it's AI month, and with the hype of OpenAI over the weekend, I'm wondering if there'll be some questions in the comments about that part of the world. But prior to Harrison AI, I've worked in a number of organizations from healthcare, disability, not-for-profit, banking, and so on. So really happy to tap into many different examples and workplaces today.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for that, Nicole. And hopefully the news of Sam Altman leaving OpenAI hasn't much effect in the background. That's been an interesting one to grab the popcorn and watch in the background over the past few days.
Just run out of popcorn, that's all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Jamie, we've got you back. How do we go with the technical issues? Are you on?
Hey, everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, it wouldn't be a live stream without a technical issue. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Jamie Finnegan. I'm currently leading people and talent over at Constantinople. So I think we're into week 9 now. So still very new there. Super early stage business. I think 65 people, but massive growth trajectory. Constantinople essentially building a new technology and operations platform for banks to sit on. So a single platform multi-tenancy, which is a massively ambitious kind of mission, but we're all on board for it, and yeah, all tracking well in the first couple of months. Prior to that, I was the global head of talent at Finder, Australia's most visited marketplace, and we grew from 90 people, I think it was, something like that when I joined, to about 650 globally across many regions. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, amazing. Welcome all. Appreciate the overviews and the insights into what you're doing. I think it just provides a little bit of context when we jump into the questions. And we're going to kick off today a little bit about, before we start looking into the crystal ball for next year in 2024, we want to understand a little bit about how the past informs your planning or your thinking as you start to approach planning for 2024. What are some of the things that have happened over the past 2 to 3 years that I guess are starting to really shape the way you think about future planning? And I might kick this over to Rimonda first and take us through a little bit about what you're thinking about and how the past is informing the future.
Sure. Thanks, Damien. Yeah, I think, look, I think to understand today, I think it's important we go back to where we've been, where we are now, and a bit about what is our focus for today and beyond. If we look back, and years and times, everyone knows COVID. We've heard a lot about COVID, but just 2020 and 21 were really kind of unstable times. People were quite overwhelmed. There were a lot of blurred lines between work and life. And at the same time, coming out of COVID, there were a lot of businesses on that fast growth trajectory. So growth focus, investment in fast scale growth businesses, and everybody kind of under the pump to grow these exciting businesses. And I'm talking predominantly about the tech space. So, from my experiences. And then we started to see a shift where the macro environment was saying a very different thing. Tech stocks had a bit of a readjustment, and the macro environment really started to change things. So there was a huge consolidation piece around early, say, I know every business was different, but around the early 2023, late 22, was all around a break on cash. Debt became more scarce, budgets were slashed, and capital was less available, and the path to profitability was now crucial to survive. So what does that mean from that point of view is that, we've had increased pressure to do more with less. And what this means to our people. So with all of those things going on, how do we readjust and refocus and pivot our business strategies and our people strategies to now sort of come up with some new offerings and also being creative with those offerings? We couldn't do as much as we used to do. And also our teams are smaller as well in a lot of these businesses. So I think we're still dealing with a bit of a hangover from the last few years. I do think it's had an impact on things like employee engagement. I know we're going to talk a bit about that today. So that's kind of where, just an intro around, making me think about some of these things, doing this panel today, really took me back a little bit. And all of us as HR professionals have gone through many different experiences through those years. So just want to others think, but yeah.
It's definitely an interesting one this year. The do more with less. I hear the word efficiency more often than not these days is one of the key drivers for what everyone's doing. There's a real shift in the way that the mindset or the challenges for all of our teams moving forward, especially for HR, right? Nicole, maybe get your take in terms of what you've seen and, in terms of Harrison, how's the past informing the future?
Yeah, thanks, Damien. Thanks, Rimonda. To build on that, I think even taking it right back to surviving a global financial crisis while working in the banking sector, or surviving a royal commission, or even various digital transformations along the way, what really resonates with me and with us is the fact that the foundations continue to be, and this is so unrevolutionary, but the foundations continue to be so critical in terms of working out what did you get right in the past and how do you continue to do it through to the future, especially in a startup sense. So things like good governance, good policies, the right values and the right culture, well-being. So I call all of that foundation. If you think about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's no longer a nice to have. These are must-haves. There is a higher expectation. Over the last decade or even longer, our employees and our workforce is becoming more mature, not in the age sense, but in the expectation sense, in terms of what they expect from a workplace. Rightly so. And so having those foundations as these are must-haves rather than nice-to-haves is such a big reminder for how we, enter the next wave of, be it 24 and beyond, post-COVID era, post-generative AI era, whatever post you want to call it. How do we build on that and make the most out of it?
Such a great point. Getting back to the foundations or back to basics. And Nicole, is your thinking here that by having really strong foundations, you're able to be agile depending on what the next challenge is that comes down the line? Is that the thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. It is that agility, but also in same vein, it's adaptability and resilience, and what I like to call bouncing forward. And I mean, you can unpack that on a personal, team, or organizational level, but taking a quick macro lens at an organizational level, it's about saying we built on a strong foundation. And so if you had any people debts or tech debt or whatever debt you had over a period of COVID era or building fast, growing fast, and that's been the trend over the last few years in the startup space, go back and check for those gaps in the foundations to make sure that you're continuing to build on a stronger basis, so that when you do need to pivot, my favorite word, you can do so, and you can do so without your workforce kind of getting whiplash and going, what are you doing to me right now?
Such a great point. Jamie, how about you? I know you're only a few weeks into Constantinople, but no doubt your lessons learned and your observations from your time at Finder and beyond is helping you to think about what you need to bring into the new role and how you're setting that up and planning forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the market trends over the last few years almost mirror my personal situation, I guess, over that time as well, in terms of, it was a lot of fluctuation in markets and people and kind of companies. So I feel like the, reduced headcount was part of the journey, personally being part of that for a period of time, and then sort of the stabilizing element of that, being able to also, I think, take some time out, which is important. I think there's a lot of people going through that situation themselves or having recently been through that. And I think it's been something that we've probably undervalued somewhat as a tech industry over the last few years, is actually taking a break, taking some time out, not rushing into the next thing, which I must say wasn't necessarily an easy thing to do initially, but you kind of, you have to train yourself to take that break and to enjoy that time as well. And then, hopefully now as the market starts to stabilize a bit more and kind of look forward, instead of having to think, about survival mode and short-term thinking, we can start thinking about longer-term planning, about growth again. And that's certainly the situation at Constantinople, given, and there's not much about them in the press, but there's obviously a record seed round in there, which is what most people would know us for, I guess, that I speak to anyway. So that obviously signals some good signs, not just for us as a business, but hopefully for the market in general and for tech companies moving forward.
Yeah, amazing. And Jamie, if you're thinking about your planning, or at least, the 2004 year, how does resilience factor into it, or does it?
I think for a lot of people that have been impacted over those years, I think that's where the resilience piece comes in. Are those people burnt out? Have they had a chance to, reflect and recover and take some time off? Are they coming in fully recharged now? And I think that's where resilience plays a big piece. I think that in any early stage business, regardless of your funding, you're going to need resilience, because things are going to change. Things are not going to go to plan all the time. And I think that they're kind of your startup scar tissue, I guess. So that growth journey at Finder, having done that already and experienced that, having that experience to take into battle for the second time is hugely beneficial. So I think that resilience will play a huge piece, just because of the nature of the size and stage company we are.
Yeah, I hear this terminology more and more often, scar tissue. It's an interesting one that's popped up recently. I think, obviously, given the past couple of years, we probably all collectively built a bit of it ourselves. But it's also a topic of resilience, and someone whose ability to adapt, change, to overcome is starting to become more of a soft skill we're looking for in candidates, at least the people I'm talking to, and what we talk about internally as well, is that, a bit of a thick skin, or that scar tissue, if you will. Ramonda, Nicole, any other thoughts on resilience and how it impacts how you're thinking about moving into next year?
I can jump in first, Nicole. It's fine. I think just resonating on some of the points you made, Nicole, about people's expectations have now increased or changed. I think resilience is an interesting topic in that as well. And the scar tissue, I think people have come out of that a little bit expecting more They've been through a lot. They're now deciding it's not just a job, it's actually a place that I can thrive. They're looking for more meaning. And I think resilience is not just I read a lot about resilience, and I think there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes you've got to be resilient. I think it's not a standalone trait that you just switch on and off. It's actually a balance around where people are. And it's also tied to many other experiences, like their past experience, what they're currently going through in their life, past leaders that they've had, past habits that they've done or reacted to certain situations have maybe affected their resilience. So it's this time of this discovery. And I feel that like P&C can play an important role in that. It's bringing that to life through everything that you do. So it's like, not being afraid to ask how people are, building that into your day-to-day, building it into your one-on-one structures or your performance structures, if you like, so that you can actually have that as the first question, rather than it being something, oh, don't worry about it, you'll get over it, you're just working too hard, have a break on the weekend. Actually letting people be honest about how they're feeling and having a culture that can actually accept that. I think sharing things like to Jamie's point about holidays and making sure people do share, if they're doing something fun in the day or they've gone for a great walk or done something for themselves, they're able to share that, so that it starts to be encouraged that this is a place that you can share the times that you also have downtime, so that when you're on, you can be on. And also celebrating and appreciating, I think, and sharing those things together as a community starts to open up the discussion around resilience. It's not just a word, try harder, work harder, and if you burn out, we'll help you, the wellness program. It's trying to help people understand what that means for them along the way, and being there. And we have an active role in that. It's not easy. I'm not saying I've worked it out or we've worked it out, but it's having those good conversations and honest conversations to be able to put it on the table and talk about it, and it ties into wellness and all those things. So that's some thoughts from me. So
love that. I think thanks so much, guys. To build from that, and as an aside, quick joke, I think there's people in 2023 who have left the country and had on holiday, and people who are yet to do that. So we'll probably see another wave of 2024 overseas trips. I'm in that mix. I bet you, without even knowing it, there you go. Without even knowing about our audience watching this right now, and I bet you it's a very culturally diverse, and people are dying to go back home or to have another break with their family and so on. So when the comments are open, I'd love to hear which side of the fence people are on, 2023 holiday or 2024 holiday. And so I say that cheekily to say that there's a combination of, whether you call it resilience or fatigue management or bouncing back from an adverse event, there is an element of self-awareness in all of that. And something I talk to the kids about, especially the teenagers in our household, around, you don't know that you're in the middle of a burnout until after the event, until it's too late. So how do you build that self-awareness and the little strategies along the way around resilient, building your resilience bucket so that you can tap into it actually when you need it most is when you're not working on it. But when you need it less, when you need it the least, is when you should be building it and kind of saving it up for a rainy day. So that's a big thing for 2024, continuing, I shouldn't say starting, it's continuing that journey of that self-awareness and bringing that narrative and that dialogue into the workplace a lot more openly. And to your point, Rimonda, if it's in one-on-ones or if it's in various team conversations where there's safety to speak up and be vulnerable and say, this is what I've noticed in myself, how do I need a little calibration, that's important. And lastly, in that vein, for me, the team dynamics play an important role. So having studied the Masters in Leadership and having spent so many years saying leadership is where it's at, leaders are so important, I've come away from that really a big fan of distributed leadership, which is everyone in the team is a leader, and in the sense that you have to keep each other accountable, and you have to make sure that you have the right team dynamics that can build that resilience in each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a great couple of points to pick out there, the proactive nature of identifying, coaching, mentoring around resilience and what it looks like, and being proactive in that stance, not allowing it to be a conversation in arrears when someone's already had a burnout effect, and you're hoping that scar tissue is the thing that gets them through the next time. It's a very different way of thinking about it these days, and it's great to hear people talking about it in that proactive kind of manner, which is great. And I think it kind of leads into a little bit about, this year we did an interesting report in Growing Pains, and we'll link to it. There's some great data in there, but the big three trends that came out of it are probably no surprise. They're topics that have been talked about over and over again in the HR industry, which is attracting talent, employee wellbeing, and employee engagement were the three big trends that really came out of it. I'm really interested to hear, we've talked a little bit about like how the past, informs future planning, but maybe we can be a bit more specific on what are the trends that you think are coming through in 2024. I know we've had a little bit of a pre-discussion about AI and where that's going. Maybe that's one of the trends that's coming. But interesting to hear from each of you just about your thoughts. And maybe, Jamie, we'll kick off with you and see what do you think is coming down the barrel for us in terms of the big hot trends for 2024?
Yeah, thanks, Damien. I think I loved your point there, Nicole, as well. I'm also a big believer in the whole distributed leadership piece. I had when I was at Finder, Frank, one of the founders there, shared a great video with me, and it was based on Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette, and it's about the submarine team and how they lead all that. That's awesome. If anyone wants to get a team on the same page as them in terms of leading from within or distributed leadership, that's a great one there. In terms of the trends there, I think, AI is definitely a trend, a hashtag, a buzzword, and it will continue to be for some time, I imagine. I think that people often use the term AI now just to, it's a great marketing tool as well. So what's truly, artificial intelligence and, using machine learning to build on things is maybe slightly different from some of the tools. But I think that, you mentioned there that one of them was talent attraction. I think that this also feeds into probably an engagement piece as well, that I think it was Rimonda who mentioned expectations there of people as well. I think the purpose behind the business, stability, I think is going to be a trend. People have obviously had a lot of fluctuation and pivoting and all those good things over the last few years. So I think that they're really keen. I think, in conversations I'm having with people currently, people are asking about what's the longer term funding situation with the business, what's the company growth plan, what's the stability of these kind of things. So I think people are less interested in, do you have catered lunches and, I don't know, cool office space, and more interested in some of those pieces. And is there a flexibility so I can support my family? And that doesn't mean, working from home 100%. I think the whole hybrid working thing is going to be something probably in 2024 that we're going to see. I don't know if it's necessarily a shift, but I think that, I think some companies have really leaned into complete remote working, like Atlassian with the whole Team Anywhere movement. I think other companies have, had to have that during periods of COVID and other times, and are now looking for people to come back into the office a little bit more. And I think it's redesigning some of those moments of why those people coming back into the office. It's not incentivizing them again with free lunches or that kind of stuff. It's more like, what's the purpose of them coming in? How do they build connections with their team? Is there workshops that people are facilitating for everyone to kind of build that connection again? And, still part of that flexibility could be, for example, I've got a young son who's going to be 2 soon. And, some days I go in late to the office after dropping him off, or I go home early to pick him up, and I make sure that, I can spend time with him. And I think that people are prioritizing those kind of things more than they would be some of the others. So there's some of my thoughts on the future. I think Damon might have dropped off, so maybe Rimonda or Nicole, if you want to go next.
Oh no, Damien's not here. No,
he's tab there. I'm back.
We're lost. No, okay. Jamie, great comments there, and some great inway to some of the things around, like some of these new priorities, I suppose, as we rebuild and re-engage for sustainability, this path for profitability. I think, we're doing, we hear that less with more, more with less, sorry. And I think the thing for us is we've actually had to, we've got a brand new company strategy. So that's all around rebuilding our path to profitability by the mid to end of next year. So with that comes a lot of things. I'm hearing things like doing the basics well, and going back to Nicole's point about foundational pieces. Like, we've had a real focus in P&C and across the business on tech and tools, and which ones are real and which ones we're going to use, and how do they integrate to other tools, but also how do they make our work life light? How do are we more efficient as a team? How do we automate those key people processes and highlight those touch points that are important to people? So we've gone through this big centralization of our people ops function. So everything comes through a ticketing system. We've got help through Slack, and it's back end managed by Jira. And we do a lot of reporting and analysis around, we can see what's happening, what's working, what are people asking us for, what are the most responses we're getting, most requests, so that then we can kind of start to look at, hang on, maybe our content's not good enough, so a lot of stuff on Confluence. We've got now about to do an AI sort of plug-in for Confluence so that people can go and find stuff rather than coming to us, and which takes our time away from doing the coaching and helping leaders and helping teams be better. We're now able to kind of at least have this system running, gives back time to the team, and also makes us more efficient as a group. And the other one is probably more around connections and collaboration. So we're fully remote business. We've got a couple of offices in the US, but predominantly not changing that. So from a P&C, I've never had that experience where I've worked for a fully remote organization for this period of time. And how do you build connections when you're not everyone's in the one city or the one place? So we've been we trial and test things. We ask people what they want. We've gone out and done a, employee resource group, brought people in, ask them what they would like, and getting them involved in that journey rather than it becoming P&C led, leader led. This is what we're doing. And people go, well, we don't want that. We're actually involving them in that process and finding that, surprisingly, some of the little things that we're doing, people absolutely love. So we just double down on those things, repeat those things, and also do a lot more kind of socially, like when we can, we connect in those cities when people are traveling, or we do a pizza night and whatever it might be. But it's got a purpose. It's not just something that just happens, because we're not getting the turnout if we do that. If there's no purpose behind it, people just don't feel like they kind of really want to go. I think the other one is all around creating momentum around the business wins, and I touched on that. So as you go through this journey and you are, starting to see some traction and hopefully some great business results, making sure that you're actually involving people in that journey, celebrating them, doing it often, doing it on Slack, doing it in your team meetings, doing it in your one-on-ones. Isn't it great? Look what we've seen. And then also tying that into performance. We've just done a whole piece around performance and made it more real around conversations. And I know a lot of you have done that, but I'm happy to share that, not more information on that later, but a lot on feedback, continuous feedback, and helping people be better and having these conversations around how they are and how they're coping, and building that into some of those tools as well. We've just gone through an M&A, so we've just acquired a new business in Sydney, around 40 people, and that's really exciting, getting to meet them. A lot more work but it's great because it's another one that people get excited about, meeting new people, hearing about a new business. How do we bring them in? How do we share stories with them and so forth, and collaborate and connect? So they're probably some of the things that are probably key to what we're focusing on. But open to Nicole to chat as well.
Love that. I think that you both have covered the trends very, very well from our perspective as well. But it's really easy to see. I mean, there's just 3 of us on this panel, and how diverse and different our journeys are in terms of our organizations. So, for example, talent attraction is not a trend or a priority for us in 2024. But if there's awesome new startups, awesome newcomers like Constantinople, who are probably going to maybe take some of our talent next year, then we are going to have, don't you dare, I'm watching you. We are going to have a talent attraction problem. So I think the message in this is to kind of really work out what is top visible priority, and what is not a priority but may shift on a month to month or year to year, depending on what the market is doing, and not to drop that, kind of park it, keep an eye on it, or assign it to someone to keep an eye on it not to kind of forget about it sitting in the corner. So because you don't want to wake up as a HR leader one day and go, oh, we've got we've had 10 people leave. We had a retention issue, which now becomes a talent attraction issue, and away we go with that cycle. So that's kind of big takeaway in terms of the priority and the trend. The priority is to prioritize, but not to deprioritize. Yeah. The other thing for me that's equally important is going back to what we call in the clinical world and the healthcare space, making sure people are operating at top of scope. And so, for example, back in healthcare, you didn't want the doctor doing tasks that should have been a nurse's job description, or you don't want the nurse's time and skills to be doing tasks that were someone else's job. So really that really clear roles and responsibilities, and making sure that people are operating at top of scope, which is where tools like AI or other systems or other tools really come into play to kind of automate the lower level tasks and help people elevate. That's a big priority, which goes against being in a startup where everybody's doing everything. In those early days, everyone's doing everything. Everyone's excited about everything. There's no clear roles and responsibilities. Knowing when you need that sort of model and when you actually need clarity around who's doing what, where, and how, and are they operating at the level and the skill set that you've hired them to.
Yeah.
As in an attempt to kind of summarize maybe some of these trends, I feel like all of us are trying to get back to a sense of normality. The baselines, right? Like, what does normal look like in 2024? Yeah. Hopefully, no big challenges that come down the line. We're resetting against efficiency targets, which I'm really interested to dig into a little bit in a minute. It feels like what we're talking about when it comes to engagement is actually doing stuff with purpose. Maybe digging a bit deeper into employee engagement and going, what is the purpose of hybrid? What do we expect to get out of it? What is the purpose of the social meet and greets and the recognition, all these kind of components? Is there a purpose that we're trying to drive through them, and maybe thinking about that at that level? And interesting to see that the debate in, hybrid, is it here to stay or not, didn't actually come up. Maybe that's because we're all mostly in tech and we all believe that it's very hard to put the cat back in the bag. Who knows? But some really interesting points here. And apologies for my dog in the background. My wife's
very
away.
Cute.
He's usually with my wife, but she's away, so I'm Hey, there's some great questions coming through from the audience. I'm going to touch on one. We'll visit a few more in a minute before I get my last question. From Harriet Barclay, she's asked, do you think there is starting to be a general shift more towards resetting performance standards and uplift of capability and expectations around what good performance looks like? Interesting question. Anyone got a take on that they want to provide?
General shift. I think that comes back to the doing more with less in some ways, in terms of the expectation of what performance was when you had all the resources and all the people in your team and all the tools that you needed, versus when there may have been some cutbacks there. There's a new level of expectation set. There's a new expectancy on individuals. It may have been that, leaders of teams have moved on and that someone else is now stepping into that for the first time. It may be that someone used to have a manager and doesn't, and now they're having to take on some of those responsibilities. So I feel like there's a shift towards people focusing on performance. I think performance has always been there, but I think there's a real, if you're looking at C-suite and founders of a company, I think the focus around performance is evident, I think, for certainly all of us to see, I would imagine, given our roles and focus. I think that then transcends through the rest of the business when there's such a, as you said, Damo, the word of efficiency is something probably heard more over the last 6 months, 12 months than ever before. So I think that's probably a knock-on effect of that.
I wonder, how do you reset what good performance looks like when C-suites ask for more with less? Does that mean performance indicators go up, but it's harder to be a high performer? Like, what are you saying? And this is a good segue, I think, into this next question. But it's a challenge, right? We want to do more with less. How does it look like when we're talking about what performance should look like in 2024? Is that something that each of you are thinking about or talking about at the C-suite?
Yeah, we are. It's been something just based on our new strategy, because we've got a lot to do in a period of time. And so it's been more about the clarity, to be honest. Like, I don't know whether it's necessarily more, well, there is a lot to do, but higher targets. It's more about the clarity that people have goals, they're able to, they understand the results that they need to achieve in their roles. We've just kicked off a new online tool around performance. Not that the tool answers everything. We've kind of been doing a lot of behavioral stuff for the last 6 months before the tool. So it's about that conversation again, and ensuring, like, you touch on all those areas, because performance isn't in isolation from engagement or attention. Like, you need to be creating a great place to work for people to perform. So I sometimes have this challenge, like, why aren't people perform? Let's get them performing. Let's the bar lifted, but you've also got to work on everything to make that happen. And so that can sometimes be kind of overwhelming when you've got small teams. Like, where do you focus your energy? Like, and that's the piece about, you do need to have an environment that's safe and people are able to talk about how they feel, and they can say, I'm not feeling the best today, but tomorrow's a new day, and look what I'm doing. And so it's having that continuous feedback and conversations around where people are, so that they can go, right, this is what I've got to do. I'm really excited. Look what we've done. Now it's on to the next thing. So it's just being more, I think performance is more top of mind, and that we're getting feedback from people as well, saying, on the other side, this is really great because now I know what to do. I now know what success looks like in my role. I am having more meaningful conversations with my leader around what that means. So it's the whole ecosystem around it that I think is now being kind of thrashed around, or being refreshed, if you like. Yep. We all know the once a year review doesn't work. Well, sorry if some people are doing that. I don't want to be rude, but it's about this continuous thing of just being able to have these conversations and having them real time, whenever your cadences are, that actually people know where they are at any one time, rather than waiting to wonder how I'm going to go in that review. And that creates kind of this cycle of being more motivated to perform. I don't know if anyone's read Daniel Pink's book, A Drive, around motivational behaviors in people and what helps them achieve great things, is this whole motivational piece. Remember, everything we're doing is to create motivation in our people to do more and to be better and to be able to share what it is about that they're experiencing, rather than you need to achieve this and this and this, and if you don't, then there's a punishment. It's kind of, we're trying to move that forward now and having these really good conversations, but it's a lot of new ideas, and it's exciting.
I'd love to jump in, Damien, if I can, just for a quick one. Having worked in the not-for-profit space for more than 8 years, that message around we need to do more with, more with less, or less with more, or whatever, is, I can talk about it for 5 days, but really for me, it's not about doing more with less. It's about doing less but deeper.
Yeah.
So it's a complete different reframe to what we should, to how we should be looking at it, which is do less things, especially in the PNC function, do them more deeply and more meaningfully. And admittedly, as a new, 3 years ago, as a new PNC department, not really having defined our EVP or our values, there's an internal joke we say we threw the kitchen sink at everything. And so now we want the kitchen sinks back and to work out what is it exactly, what's stuck on the wall is another analogy. And, let's do more of that and more deep and meaningful of that, but less of other things. That to me, because, there's a finite amount of money, there's a finite amount of time and resources. You don't want to burn people out along the way. And that sentence has such a psychological, heavy loaded meaning behind it. And it means something for everyone.
Nicole, this is such a great point, and I think we've all touched on it. The question I was going to pose to you, or which we've somewhat touched on, is, because of all the headcount reductions and the reductions in spend and, the drive for efficiencies, there must be some really interesting conversations happening at a C-suite level right now, right? And Nicole, it's not always the case where you get a C-suite that understands they have to reduce the remit to be able to do more with less effectively. There's plenty of businesses out there that continue to push for very big new goals just with less resources and string out the resources that they've got. So, it sounds like Harrison, if they're applying, we'll reduce the scope because we've got less resources, is quite rational. Really interesting, and maybe, this is a conversation that's happening for a lot of our audience at the moment, is how do you sit in the middle? And I always think of HR as the mediator between the business and the people, and how to get the best out of both sides, right? What are the things the business needs to achieve? How do we get those things out of the people that we've got on the teams and bring them together to ultimately, get the outcomes that we want? So how are those conversations going with the C-suite? And Jamie, I know you're early into your role at Constantinople, but maybe you can shed a little bit of light on the conversations that you're having around, how do we do planning against 2024 goals with maybe some more limited resources, or maybe not so limited, considering you've just smashed the biggest seed raise in history. So maybe it's not so limited.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhat in a fortunate position as well with one of my chats with the founders just before I joined Constantinople was about what would you propose for a people strategy, and then how would you execute it? So thankfully they were kind of aligned with that from the beginning, which isn't, I know, always the case. But I count, again, myself very fortunate that we're able to have that discussion now. Just because the founders and the C-suite are aligned with that doesn't necessarily mean the rest of the business feel that's what we need to focus on as well. So I think my approach to that has been just getting to know people as much as I can, which is obviously I wanted to do anyway in the first few weeks of joining a new business. But I think not sitting in a room and just going, okay, what do we need to do as a business? But like just having a chat with them, understanding them as people, making them feel comfortable with you, and then, kind of weaving that into the conversation around what do you see as core focuses for us? What are your frustrations? What do you think is going well? What should we continue doing as a business and from a people perspective? I think that thankfully, when those conversations align with what the C-level is saying, you're onto a winner already, and it's about connecting the dots there. If there is any differences there, or maybe things that hadn't been considered or whatever, then I think it's about kind of just reframing that and thinking about what you can do creatively to address those things, or to enhance those things, whatever it may be. I think for us, like, the business has been pushing so hard to a go live date market launch, which happened yesterday, I think was the market launch. Yeah, 20th. So everyone was kind of like really heads down, focusing towards that. And I think that I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but someone mentioned about kind of celebrating the things along the way. And I think that was something that people from my conversations were asking for more of. And I think that when I said that to the founders, they were like, yes, we should do more of that. So I think it wasn't that no one didn't want to do it. It was just no one had kind of connected the dots there. So we had a kind of celebration in the office last Friday, and we've got some of the ones kind of planned, and some of the ways of recognizing achievements, like our all hands that we do on a kind of Friday with everyone, adding a shout out section to that, or a bravo section, someone called it, like just something again to recognize people. So again, just introducing little things like that can have massive impact early on in a company of this size. And I think that the founders, C-level, are seeing that, which is great that they're kind of all aligned with that. So like I said, I'm probably in somewhat of a fortunate position that, we've had this discussion prior to kind of going into it all. And now it's about executing those things and maybe speaking slightly as we go. But Rimonda and Nicole, I'm sure you've got different versions of that as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in if I may. Thanks for sharing some good reminders for me as you were speaking, Jamie. So that was very useful. I think, yes, we have conversations about people and our people strategy at various points rather than a specific point in time, be it from a cadence point of view. If we're setting our strategy, business strategy and people strategy within that at the start of the calendar year, we then do another conversation around budget time. Then we have a whole heap of strategic conversations around we have performance reviews more than once a year, but there's a big one that happens around July, August. So we have another conversations then. Then we have a well-being sort of check-in as an executive team into Christmas. And I would be lying if I said, yeah, they're all great conversations. There's no healthy tension. There's no tension at all. We're all aligned on we need to do less. We need to cruise into Christmas. We're all going to have a great shutdown period and no one's working. And, all our projects are on time, on budget and all that good stuff. That's, inevitably that's not the reality for many of us. And there's always a healthy tension between business needs and people needs, including people who actually are on the C-suite. They're pretty tired and kind of maxed out themselves. So starting from that individual and starting from within is where we have those discussions around, and often they're about how are you, what's your capacity like? How are you doing as a founder? and what are you doing more of or less of to firstly look after yourself, but secondly acknowledge that you've hired all this great talent. How do you help them build their capacity and operate at top of scope so that you can delegate some things? And that's a conversation that you're going to win some days and terribly lose the next day. And so at a macro level, you, as a senior HR leader, you're going to kind of count your wins and losses at a strategic high level rather than on a day-to-day, because that can get very exhausting very quickly. And kind of think back to the C-suite is also a group of people who are doing the best they can and who are genuinely, hopefully you have a team that genuinely cares about people, and in doing so they're reflecting that behavior in how they're looking after themselves as well.
Yeah, some great insights from both of you, and again, Nicole, like we work this panel, like how different all of our experiences are. And I think around, the ELT and C-suite, similar to you, we go through the cadences of, strategy planning and strategy review. And we do that we do that on the financial calendar year. So that kind of starts on the 1st, or starts in June, the end, and then starts reopening to new goals in July. And then we go for that calendar year. And so the people and culture team then come up with, some suggested goals aligned to the company strategy. We have that conversation with the ELT. They have lots of input. Again, it's often many discussions. Can't you do these, 5 more goals? No, we can only really do focus on the top 3 or 4. Anyhow, so we have that. And then what we've done going forward is so we've built some cadences, because remember, we're all fully remote. We don't sometimes have a chance to go into the office. Got some people in the US and a chance to go into the office and just have lunch together and talk. So we've brought together an actual people every week. We have a people agenda with the ELT, and we touch base on anything that comes up, like wellness. It could be pockets of the business that are struggling. It could be people are struggling. It's an update on our initiatives, how we're tracking, how we're going, anything we need to change, anything we've learned that we could do better. And then we also just have some actions that we kind of just help keep top of mind, so that all of us are kind of aligned to some of the things, that it doesn't just become a one-way thing with one leader and myself, or the CEO and myself. It's actually us as a group and community have a voice in all of those things. And and I find the metrics and all those things kind of help as well in that session, and being able to be, again, it's that more continuous and that real time versus sometimes it can be when you're all working remotely, you're doing your work, and then you're kind of this, people talk about misalignment, with some of the leaders, and the business is going forward. They've been to had conversations, and then it's pulling those conversations back in. What does that mean to the people? What's, again, the impact on people? What do we need to change? What do we need to address? What do we need to think about differently than we're doing today? So, yeah.
I love that. And especially the point you made, Rimonda, there about, planning and coming together as an entire team at the C-suite and talking about the outcomes and goals that we all want to do, instead of planning in silos and in isolation, and then coming back to the middle and realizing that it doesn't fit. The mold's broken. The planning is not quite complete because everyone's on a slightly different page.
Exactly.
It's a real key element, which is, I think, sometimes easier said than done, but nonetheless, an important point. I'm going to just quickly kick over to the audience now and take a few questions, because there's a few that have been building up, which is great. Joe, if you could pull up the one from Michael Delaney. I think this is a natural knock-on from the conversation. And effectively, what the question is here is, what advice can you give the audience how to bring employees along on the journey of do more with less? Because it's such an easy thing for everyone to say, but ultimately, well, not ultimately, but a lot of the times the impact can be on the employees, right? They're asked to take on more duties, more goals, more stress. You stretch them further. How do you get the buy-in from the teams when, this message is coming down from C-suite, and also just generally because of market conditions? Maybe anyone want to take the lead on that one?
I'm happy to jump in. I think that transparency is a key piece there. Leaders genuinely sharing the why behind it from a business perspective with the rest of the team brings them on that journey. It's not just we're trying to increase like profitability at the not taking into account your well-being. It's we're struggling as a business, and these are the results of what will happen if we don't, make these changes. We're trying to protect other elements of the company. It might be that kind of thing. It could also be messaging that in a different way. Instead of you're doing more with less, it's a growth opportunity in some ways for people. If someone's never managed before but wanted to, maybe that's a chance for them to step into that kind of role. Or if they've not been able to input into the strategy as much in the past, then I think that's a great opportunity for them to do so. So I think transparency is a key piece from leaders and founders of companies to bring people on that journey and show them why their work. I think Rimonda was talking about earlier with performance, how their work ladders up into that overall strategy, like what they're being asked to do has this knock-on effect. So I think the transparency piece is key in communicating that. And then also, again, letting people know that it's not all doom and gloom. They're being asked to do different things. It's like, this could be a great growth opportunity for you as an individual. And if people have been managing them properly and having one-on-ones and things, they should already know these people want to manage people, these people want to focus on something else, and those goals should already be in place. So it should be relatively simple to then lean into that and frame that in the right way for those people.
Yeah, great points. Maybe even in tech as well, there's some kind of benefit in having the long-term incentives that align to the outcomes that we all want as well, right? Like I think in our industry, there's an added bonus in there in terms of how we do our remuneration and those options and shares as well, which maybe gives us a little bit of a competitive advantage in other industries that maybe they don't have. Nicole, what about yourself? How do you take the employee on the journey?
Yeah, this is going to sound so obvious, but often isn't done as well as it should be. And hi, Michael, you've probably already heard this from me. But two things come to mind: coaching or asking. Like, let's ask, what do we do less of, more of? And bringing, if there's an equity piece or people are giving you their time, of course, you're paying them a salary for that. But in an ideal world, and I know it's not perfect every time, you're building this thing, product, business with your people. Without them, you're not going very far. So asking, what is it that we are doing more of, less of, whether that's from a PNC lens or from a product roadmap or from a commercial lens, any department that if you want people to come on the journey, you've got to want to ask their opinion. It doesn't mean you take every opinion and act on it, because there'll be diverse opinions and you'll be going left one day, right the next. You have to be centered in your decision making. Say, I heard you, but I'm not doing this, I'm doing that instead. Closing the loop with your people once you've asked for their opinion is so critical. But also on the other side of that is really, really important, is consistency. And being consistent, whether you're the exec team or whether you're a leader or whether you're a team member, in doing what you mean and meaning what you do, or sort of saying what you do and doing what you say. That discipline around, okay, we're committed to these OKRs, or we're committed to these things, or we're no longer doing this. You can't wake up the next day. I mean, you can change your mind for good reasons, but don't just do it for the sake of I'm bored now, or actually that thing that I said I'm not going to do anymore, that was fun, I'm going to go back and do it, even though we said we're not going to, or it's my comfort zone. I'm going to go back to that task or that habit, or scheduling a 3-hour meeting, even though we agreed that's not an efficient use of time, because that's my, there's the habits that I've developed. So unlearning once you've made those decisions and consistently applying them is pretty key.
I like it. No flip-flopping. Set a new
no, please.
Direction.
Yeah. Is that a new proper term? Yeah.
If it isn't, it should be, in my opinion, Nicole. How about you? This is our last one before we wrap. I know we're very close to time, but would love to get your perspective on this. What are you doing to bring the employees along on the journey in terms of like efficiencies and maybe having to do more with less?
Yeah. I think Nicole and Jamie's comments, I think they really resonated with me around, and also I would say using these buzzwords are getting a bit overused, and sometimes more with less can be triggering to people. As I said, there could be people very overwhelmed, just feel like, oh, wow, I've got to wake up earlier and do more and more and more, try and, let's stay up late doing more and more. The point that I think, Nicole and Jamie touched on, which was the goals, is absolutely critical. Like, it's what what are we doing? We might be doing less, but deeper, to Nicole's point. What are those OKRs that are critical? It could be an update on the OKRs. I know these are our goals, but this week I need everyone around this one because we're going live with a client implementation, for example. So everybody, please work with your teams and leaders. For example, let's all focus on this. And that drives the momentum in the right place. As I was saying, the clarity and the prioritization for people is what they need to be able to then be successful, rather than do more and you're on burnout, which we know that isn't going to create, that's not good for engagement, that's not good for retention. And what that just does is that cycle then starts. So it's really important to make this a positive thing. I think Jamie touched on this is growth. This is an opportunity. And then also any wins that happen if things have been done, if it's a new feature to a product, share that. Thanks, team, on Friday you worked on this. Look what we can do now for client X. They're so happy. Thanks, and call those people out. Call them out in that thread. Bring everyone in. If you're using Slack or using some kind of message board, bring all the people that are working on that initiative together so they can share some of the things that they're doing, share some of the successes, call out some things they're struggling with. Just be able to kind of keep that as an organic kind of, I suppose, comms within your business so that people go, oh, almost FOMO, like, oh, what do they do? Oh, that looks good. What should I be doing something? And so people then go to their leader and say, what could I do more? What could I help with to make this more successful? How do we ensure we meet our deadlines? So it's just some of those basics rather than, and I did like Nicole's point about asking people, what do we need to stop, start and deliver? What do we need to prioritize to do these things? Because you can't put more into the funnel and expect everyone to perform. What you're going to find is a dilution, the kitchen sink. It's just like everyone's working and it's the hamster on the treadmill. They're just churning, but not many things are actually getting delivered. And so I know that's not always the case, but people then get stressed. I want to achieve, I want to deliver as an individual. And when you're not, you feel like I've got 5, 10, 15 balls, and people sometimes are proud to say they've got 15 balls in there. And I always go, well, what do you actually do? What have you done? And then they can't tell me. We don't want those results that go, whoa, well done, you got 15 balls in the air and you're working 24/7 and up at night, 3 a.m. in the morning. That's not sustainability. That's not a part of profitability. That's, as you know, we're going to have a lot of unhidden costs that will come from that, people, human costs. So we've all got, we all got our roles to play and have a loud voice when you need it. But it's important. We ask people, how are they going? So anyway, that's just some things from me. And
I love the power of peer recognition that we've talked about. I think it's a huge component of motivation, especially through tough times. Everyone's in it together. I've seen it being in organizations. And I would love to do an entire session on goal setting and how to wrap performance around that, because that feels like it's a great component to answer the how do we become more effective. It really starts at the top and the goals that you set in the organization. So, just some amazing insights there from everybody. So, hopefully the audience has got some great takeaways from this. I know I have. And I'll just say a quick thank you to everybody. Really a pleasure speaking to you on getting your insights into the crystal ball of 2024 and what we with some good stuff. So Joe, I'll kick it back over to you.
Excellent. I've been sitting behind the scenes, and one of the key things I wanted to say is thank you so much to all of you for the wonderful intel you've provided. As a P&C leader myself, I think the key thing to walk away with, and also to throw back to you all, is when we talk about business resilience, it really starts with us. That's the key takeaway that I've taken from this session: self-care and prioritization, and making sure as HR leaders we've got to think about ourselves to be able to give to the others in the business as well. So thank you so much, Damien. These sessions are invaluable for HR leaders, both here and abroad. So if you're watching now, thank you for watching. Thank you for your questions. Please go to get more insights from Growing Pains Report. I have shared it in the chat. It's invaluable. I downloaded it. It'll give you some more information in addition to what's been shared today. So thank you once again to everybody. Thank you, Damien.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.